Welcome back to the Arcane Forge. My name's Josh, and today I wanted to talk about something a little bit different to usual. Halloween is just around the corner, hence my spooky decorations behind me. You can see it's beginning to creep in, and on top of that, we have a brand new series of Stranger Things just around the corner. One of my favourite TV shows of all time, not just because it has a lot of D&D stuff in it, but it truly does. And that's what I wanted to cover with this video. Some of the D&D references and themes that are spread throughout Stranger Things, and what that might mean for Season 2. Before I get started though, so Stranger Things is an absolutely fantastic TV series. Not just because it has a load of D&D references in it, but because it's a fantastic story all the same. It's like going in a time machine and visiting the 80s through a Stephen King novel. So if you haven't watched it, I need to warn you that there will definitely be a lot of spoilers ahead, and I definitely recommend watching the TV series. So if you haven't, pause this video now, go and watch it on Netflix, and then get back to us here, because we have some cool theories. But anyway, back to the video. So the first obvious one, clearly, the group play D&D a lot. We can see that in the first few scenes. They're obsessed with it, and it becomes a kind of visual metaphor for how they will band together as a party, fight off monsters, go on a huge adventure with massive character arcs, develop skills, and level up over time. But on top of playing the game, it seems to me that as they are banding together as a party, each of these characters represents a different class in the game. Now we can see through some drawings that the group have made that they're already definitely playing certain classes. Mike is the DM, the Dungeon Master, Lucas is a Knight, they have Dustin the Dwarf, and Will the Wise, a Wizard. Now Mike being the DM is fantastic symbolism for the rest of the whole story. He's our kind of central focus, he's one of the main protagonists, and he is our vehicle through which we will see the entire series. He's literally telling the story just as he would as a DM. We discover stuff through him, he's a nice, easy, accessible character. We can all kind of relate to Mike in one way or another. Lucas, however, seems to be slightly different from the character that he's playing. Obviously he plays a knight, as we can see from the drawing, but I think he's a bit more of a ranger. He's independent, he's wise. He knows enough about tracking and survival to know that 11 might be screwing with their compasses, trying to avoid massive misfortune.
She can slam doors in her mind, she can definitely screw up a compass. Why would she do that? Because she's trying to sabotage our mission.
He doesn't seem like a knight because he's willing to dive into conflict and do some pretty dubious activities.
Does the 7 count? It was a 7? Did Mike see it? And it doesn't count.
Which doesn't fit the kind of lawful good knight paladin kind of feel. He has a strong code of brotherhood to which 11 clearly does not apply until near the end.
Because she's a traitor!
He's hesitant of her, he's wary. He doesn't want her to sort of destabilize the dynamic that the rest of the group have. He cares for them, which is good. But equally, we can see a lot of really juvenile behaviour from him. He's a kid after all, you know? But he kind of hazes and teases his friends. He's the only one who kind of berates them and verbally abuses them as well.
Don't be a pussy! Fireball him!
So I wouldn't necessarily say that he's entirely good. If he had a character archetype, I'd probably call him lawful neutral. These bonds are really important to him. He's strict with them when it comes to letting 11 in. But at the same time, he's not good, he's not bad, he lives by his own code, which suits a ranger pretty damn well. But on top of that, he's an absolute badass when it comes to using a slingshot. Nice ranged weapons for a ranger. Dustin the Dwarf seems to suit him quite nicely, but in the team he seems to perform the role of a bard. He's the glue that binds the group together.
That's right! You better run! She's not running, she's crazy!
He's talkative and charming and charismatic.
Hello, this is Dustin, the Secretary and Treasurer of Hawkins Middle AV Club. Do you eat kangaroos for breakfast?
And he's inspiring while not necessarily wanting to get right stuck into the middle of conflicts. He's always in the back of a fight, giving advice, spurring people on. He's definitely a good character, but whether or not he's a lawful good character, sticking by certain codes rigidly.
But the bottom line is, you push first. And you know the rule, draw first blood.
No way, I'm not shaking his hand.
You're shaking his hand.
No, I'm not.
This isn't a discussion, this is the rule of law.
Or if he's a more chaotic character, due to his fondness for stealing and hoarding food,
Buddy! I found a chocolate bunny! Does anyone want this?
it's uncertain. I'm going to go for lawful good, because I think the food thing is just a character flaw of his that just adds to his kind of bubbly personality. Now Will plays a wizard. We can tell obviously from the very first scene where he's casting fireballs.
Fireball!
No one else in early D&D had access to that kind of stuff. And as time goes on, we definitely learn that he is connected to other planes. He has a sense of magic about him, but I feel like he fulfills the role of a rogue. When he gets trapped in the Upside Down, whereas people like Barb get taken away and killed pretty much instantly, Will is able to hide away, sneak, and evade the gaze of the Demogorgon for so long that he's able to survive until he gets rescued. Those kind of hiding skills are very difficult to come by. So he's definitely the kind of burglar, thief, rogue type of character. But he does have a really interesting dynamic with Eleven. If he is this kind of wizard character, this arcane character, as soon as he gets taken away, the party obviously needs some more magic on their side. It's almost as if whoever was playing Will had to roll up a new character, but wanted to play another magical character, so they roll up Eleven. Now Eleven doesn't really tend to play the game, but she fulfills the role of a wizard, a sorcerer, or a scion. We obviously know she has massive psychic powers, telekinetic abilities that are revolutionary for this story. She is the glass cannon of the group, their big gun. But I'd probably label her a sorcerer. There's some debate amongst the group when they're talking about X-Men issues. They're talking about mutants and whether or not Eleven was born with her abilities, or if she somehow acquired them. And we learned that through the MK Ultra program that her mother was exposed to, she was born with them. A key distinguishing feature between a wizard and a sorcerer. Wizards learn their magic, acquire it, and sorcerers are born with it. They are magical in nature. Now in terms of her alignment, pretty good.
She looks pretty. Good. You look pretty good.
Nah, I'd call her a true neutral. And that's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, she's 11. She's strange to this world. She doesn't really know what's going on. She has to learn it, almost as if she's not from here. As if she's elven? 11? She seems like another creature, a magical creature that has wandered into this reality. I don't think it's an accident at all that her name sounds so much like Elven when there's so many D&D themes in this series. Elves tend to have a chaotic alignment, or at least stray away from law, which we know that Elle does. She's terrified of the law, the FBI, the CIA, the government that's trying to take her back. She strives to do good, but often does this through violent means. She's totally cool with killing stuff, for example. And she's into personal liberty at almost any cost. She wants to be free of these guys. But that's not to forget that she's intrinsically tied to evil, the Demogorgon. There's a lot of weight to suggest that she either is the Demogorgon.
But did you ever stop to think that maybe she's the monster?
Or at least she's tied to it in some way. Destruction, she reaches out a hand, and it almost looks as though the creature does too. So I'm going to go with true neutral here. She could go either way, and I think in Season 2 we might even see, possibly, her time in the Upside Down muddling her mind enough to make her do slightly darker things. So who knows? But we'll find out pretty soon. Now I know the kids are playing D&D, but what edition? Well, the whole thing takes place in 1983, which gives us a really good clue. And you could be forgiven for thinking that it's pure first edition, but not quite. 1983 is the year that the revised expert set comes out. That was the first revision to D&D that basically allowed people to go on longer adventures and campaigns. Initially, when the game first came out, it was designed with short, one-off adventures in mind. You could level up from 1 to 3 and have lots of little self-contained adventures. The idea being that, like a lot of board games of the day, you would meet up regularly and have a different adventure each time, or every couple of times. But with the expert set being released, it meant that people could go on huge adventures that would last months at a time, maybe even years. And we can see a little bit later on that they do have a very grubby, very beaten up version of the expert set. Seeing that it only came out that year, I have no idea what they were doing to it. Collectors probably looked at that book with very, very anxious eyes. Now the monster from the Upside Down,
The Demogorgon!
the Demogorgon, is interesting for a whole bunch of reasons. Now the kids obviously don't believe that this is the Demogorgon. They don't believe that it's come to life from their story, but what if it has? We know that there's a really interesting parallel when Will tries to cast a fireball at it in the game. Just after Mike has summoned the Demogorgon, Will misses his fireball, and then later when he's being tracked down by the actual Demogorgon, he chooses the offensive route again. He gets a gun, tries to shoot it, but can't. He misses, and then is captured. Did Mike summon the actual Demagoguing? Is it Mike who's actually made a rift into this world? Maybe find out more about that in Season 2. Or it could just be an interesting device to progress the story. But what is the Demagoguing? Demagoguing is the name of a particular being, or beings. It's the Prince of Demons. It's got these two terrible ape baboon style heads, each with their own personality. Gargantuan in size, it has writhing tentacles, immensely magically potent, and it's constantly at odds with its two heads. Now the kids use this name obviously to manifest their fears. They're terrified and so naturally go towards the scariest thing they can think of. But the Demagoguing could be a really good reference to more of what we're going to see with 11. Now I mentioned before that the two might be connected, but what if this Demagoguing, a creature with two heads and two totally separate personalities that are constantly at odds with each other, represents this monster and 11 constantly fighting, and in the end dooming each other to the upside down, banishing itself. Food for thought at least. The Demagoguing that we meet in Stranger Things lives in the upside down, this kind of dark dimension. In the show, the kids liken it to the Veil of Shadows. You can see that there's a clipping from a magazine or a book there, be mistaken for a D&D reference. It's not quite. The Veil of Shadows doesn't actually exist in D&D, but there are loads of things that totally fit the bill. A plane of existence called the Plane of Shadows, or the Abyss, actually do exist. They're commonly now known as the Shadowfell in 5th edition, and it's eerily similar to the Upside Down. It's described as a dimension of black, oozing, grey, white, colourless, lifeless, where all joy has been leached from every object. But otherwise, it's a strange, twisted and distorted mirror of our dimension, because it touches it and clings to it so tightly. In D&D there's another dimension like this, called the Feywilds. It's literally like the world flipped on its head, as if humans had never damaged it. It also touches almost every corner, and could be the opposite of this Shadowfell. Maybe we'll see some of that in Season 2, who knows. But we know that the Shadowfell leaks into the material plane quite frequently. We know that the Greyhawk setting involves the Curse of Strahd, a horrendous vampire whose domain is in the material plane, but is a gateway to the Shadowfell. All around it the shadows move and arc, which could be a metaphor for the CIA headquarters, where 11 was experimented on, or could be something for us to yet see in the next season. Now when 11 flips the board over, for us to understand what the Upside Down is, we see this glistening surface of the game board on the other side. And the Shadowfell is also described as entirely oil covered and shimmering, almost beautiful. It's a nice little reference there. So I wonder if we'll see any more of the Upside Down in the next series. It looks like we might, but we could see somewhere else entirely. We know in the trailer for Season 2 that the Fessel Hydra, the nickname given to this next threat that the children will face, seems to be illuminating the sky in red with lightning, not something that we saw in the Upside Down. This could be another plane. We get an idea that the kids' jobs are not yet done. In the final scene, when they're finally playing D&D again, they've come full circle, they've gone on their adventure and they've learned a lot. They've leveled up, they've returned to the tavern, as it were. Lucas's character triumphantly shouts that he's slain the Fessel Hydra. They cut off the 7 heads.
Lucas cuts off the 7 heads and Dustin places them into his bag of holding.
But Fessel Hydras famously have 8 heads, indicating maybe that there's something left for them to do, that the Fessel Hydra will return and that it will be their enemy in the next series. Now they go on to mention all the loose ends that are in the story.
But what about the Lost Knight?
And the Proud Princess and those weird flowers in the cave.
We have the Lost Knight, which could either be 11 in the Upside Down, or it could refer to Chief Hopper, whose adventure looks like it's just beginning, and who's lost in the sorrow of his child dying. And the strange flowers in the cave seems to indicate maybe the eggs, the incubation, the worms that we later see have been incubating inside Will. But knowing that the Fessel Hydra looms over the next horizon, and it's definitely not dead, we know it's got 1 head left. Even in this theoretical scenario, there could be another level of deception. At the very beginning of the story, when the kids are playing D&D, before Mike summons the Demagoguing, he summons some pygmies.
An army of troglodytes charge into the chamber.
Who run past scared.
Ooh. Ooh. Ow! That didn't come from the troglodytes, no, that came from something else.
What if they're not going to fight the Fessel Hydra next? What if they didn't even fight the Demagoguing? Being a prince of demons, he's a pretty horrendous threat. What if the kids only encountered what is the version of pygmies of this realm that ran away and were thrown back into their own dimension before the real Demagoguing arrives, this new horrendous threat that looms on the horizon, casting light into a realm of entire darkness. If it is the Fessile Hydra though, the Fessile Hydra in D&D refers to a particular creature that, just like it sounds, is a bit like a Hydra. It's got a load of heads, but where does the Fessile come from? Fessile refers to Thessalar, the horrendously powerful lich that created them. He happens to dwell in the Greyhawk setting, and as I mentioned before, that's a place that touches our realm. Now Thessalar belongs to a particularly terrifying part of the Greyhawk setting, a module called the Age of Worms. But if we look at the module, we can kind of see something that might hint towards what our adventurers might have to do in Season 2. Because Age of Worms sounds ominously familiar if you remember the last scene of Season 1, where we see poor Will throwing up these things that have been gestating in his stomach. Definitely looks very worm-like. In this module, adventurers have to go to something called the Wormcrawl Fissure, which is where Thessalar resides. The Wormcrawl Fissure could be a reference to the Upside Down, this kind of portal, this entrance back in the high school by the looks of it. Or it could be a portal to a totally different dimension. As I mentioned before, this Fessile Hydra, whatever this creature is that they see next in the trailer for Season 2, does look like it's in maybe a slightly different version of the Upside Down. Interestingly, adventurers have to get into the Wormcrawl Fissure, which could be the Upside Down, in order to reunite a scholar's soul with their body. Now that could be a reference to 11 kind of coming back. It might be that the kids, or maybe some of the grown-up characters in this story, have to go back into the Upside Down and rescue 11. But souls returning to bodies seems a little bit more like maybe 11's mum. We meet her, we find out that she was part of the MK Ultra program, and that when she had her child, it was 11, and she was gifted in a very certain way. But before that, we understand that whatever happened to her in these experiments completely broke her mind. She's just a shell. She's very similar to in Dungeons and Dragons. For example, if you use the deck of many things, along with many other methods of potentially losing your soul, very particular effects happen to you. And it seems very similar to a psychotic break, or to having your personality essentially die. Your soul dies when it's removed. So poor 11's mum could be who this scholar is that the adventurers have to go and meet. Maybe she is the Demagoguing and needs to be reunited with her body. Maybe she's been trapped in the Upside Down for so long as the Demagoguing that she has slowly evolved and changed into this monstrous form. Or perhaps her mind and soul is trapped somewhere within, and once reunited she'll have some more answers for us. Either way, I see that as a very strong potential for Season 2, that 11's mum will be in some way slightly more involved. But what are your theories for the new season? Leave your comments down below, or on any of our social media. Again, I mentioned they're in the description. We're a brand new channel dedicated to all things fantasy, role-playing, all that good stuff. Just escaping from the MK Ultra program ourselves. So any help you can give us by leaving a like, favoriting this video, sharing it with one of your friends, or subscribing goes a huge way towards defeating the Demagoguing.